Welcome to Run, Build, Grow, the podcast that laces up its running shoes and dives deep into the heartbeat of the communal spirit of running. I'm your host, Andrew Ware, the RunninRev, and I'm thrilled to take you on this exhilarating journey where we explore stories that go beyond the pavement. For this episode, we welcome in Jess Hofheimer, who comes in as one of the coaches, in fact, the founding coach of Pace of Me Running. She is based out of Raleigh, North Carolina, and I was so excited for this conversation, beginning to look at getting coaches, getting those who have sort of that brain level experience of what it means to help runners become the best that they are and get the most out of this community, this nature of movement. And so this was a really exciting one because as I will mention, I saw Jess through Instagram and was reminded that we both follow one another by seeing her just joyous celebrations with some of her athletes as they cross the finish line at the Richmond Marathon, and seeing the sort of support and community that she offers her athletes. I wanted to dive into that a little bit more and see, what makes her as a coach want to be so close, want to build that community support, that relationship with her runners. So let's dive in and let's hear about Jess's story. All right, welcome in, everybody. Hopefully everyone is doing well. Today I am joined by Jess Hofheimer. Jess, how you doing?
I'm great. Thank you so much. Happy to be here.
Yeah, definitely. And this is one, we were just talking about before it came on, just seeing the connections that there are in the running community and connections you wouldn't even know about. Jess is someone who apparently I have been following for some time now, and yet seeing her on social media now through the Richmond Marathon, immediately knew, seeing the spirit, and we'll talk about it, the coaching spirit that she brings to this game. I knew I had to get her on right away. So Jess, before we really hop into that part of the journey, let's start where I like to start here. What is your community and what makes your community awesome?
Well, my coaching community is probably what I would answer that with. Pace of Me Coaching. We are a group of people across the country. There are now 5 coaches on Pace of Me Coaching. I started it back in 2011, and we have athletes across the country, coaches here in North Carolina, one in New Jersey and one in Chicago. And it's people running really anything from the mile to the 100-mile.
Oh, wow. That, it's so interesting to start to think about the coaching game and to see all of, that it never seems like there is a lack of presence of running coaches. And yet oftentimes it seems like, there's a lot of opportunity for folks to be able to offer that more holistic coaching sense. And definitely reading through, and I had to copy it off your website because I just love the quote so much. It says on your website, and I think it's on the front page, "We believe that we perform our best when we are healthy and happy and work hard to get to know each person we coach." And so I want to hear what bred this sort of idea and understanding as a coach. Where did this come from? Let's hop back to Jess when Jess was a runner, and what kind of made you want to become a coach, and then what made you want to become a coach that, when I look at coaching, the best coaches I've had in my life are the coaches who look at me not just as a runner, not just as an athlete, but as an actual human being. And so what was the development of that in your life?
Yeah, I found running when I was 24 years old, out of college, and really, I was an athlete in high school. Played soccer and was a cheerleader and played on the tennis team. I've always loved the community that sport brought to my life. But when I went to college, I wasn't good enough to play college sports. I tried, at least where I went to school was a D1 school at the University of Virginia. And I did dabble in club soccer, and intramural, but I struggled a lot with my self-care in college, and lost someone really, really dear to me to suicide while I was in college. And that in hindsight, like I realized that it was a trauma in my life and I coped with that in not the healthiest ways. And was partying a lot and sort of escaping. Maybe I guess I can look back now. I mean, this was half my life ago. I'm 48 now. So like literally half my life ago. But I, turned to like drugs and alcohol to escape some of the pain that I was feeling. And when I graduated college, I became like a young professional and realized those things were not serving me anymore. And I was pretty much fed up and wanted to, rediscover who I really am. And I just thought running sounded like a good idea. I mean, this is way before it we didn't have Garmin's. There were, not, things have really changed since the year 1999 when I started running. But it just seemed like really accessible and maybe I could just put a pair of running shoes on. And I bought a book on marathon training and coached myself for a marathon and started doing that actually before I even picked a marathon. I didn't even know that all marathons were the same distance. So I never make fun of people when they ask, "Oh, how far is your marathon?" Like I used to ask that question. But running changed my life. And I never would have guessed back then that I would now be 48 and coaching people. I ran the Philadelphia Marathon in 2000, and I think there were 6,000 runners in that race that day. And I was actually there this year for the race. And there were definitely over 20,000 runners at that race this year. So it was really cool. But anyway, over the years, like running just has always been there for me as a tool to discover who I am, express who I am. It's more than about my physical health. And I became inspired to learn how the science behind why running is so transformative. And self-coached myself from that first marathon of 5.5 hours to what became a PR of 3:11. And then I hired a coach after that. And my first experience with a coach was really not great. It was, a big leap for me, investing in someone who was going to help steer the ship. And I totally, I guess, as a people pleaser that I am, I wanted to like everything he said, I wanted to do, and I wanted to do well. And I didn't listen to myself or my body as well. And I totally overtrained, put myself in adrenal insufficiency. It was just a really rough road, but a great teacher for me. And, I realized like you have to look at the whole person and cultivate a relationship with that person. Running has, even though I've been running for 24 years, there have been periods where I was having babies. Winter would happen. I'm not a winter person, and I would like lose my mojo. I've started.
That's me in the summer.
Stopped.
That's me in the summer.
Oh yeah, I know people are. It's interesting. That's always something I find so interesting. I've coached people like that who are like, summer is like my hard time, and for me, it's winter. But I essentially, my own experiences in my athletic journey have greatly informed how I want to show up as a coach. And I feel like there have been times where I've been going through really hard things in my life and I've maybe coped with them in an unhealthy way, even with sport. And I haven't, sometimes you can have like short-term performance gains when you're kind of like running away from your issues. But when you're not your happiest, most like true to yourself, like you might succeed short-term, but in spite of some of those things, as opposed to because of them. I have really come to believe it's something I just know to be true, that we will perform our best when we are our healthiest and happiest selves. So as a coach, we just do one-on-one coaching. And we really do believe meeting the athlete where they are, helping guide those decisions, from a training and even goal setting standpoint, to help nourish the person to perform and feel their best, and also be brave and discover what they're capable of. I'm still a runner. I run a lot.
Yeah.
And, I might be like knocking on the door of 50, but thanks to some of the things I know about training and some of the advances in like running science, nutrition, super shoes, all of those things, like I'm still going after PRs and getting really close. So it's fun. It's fun to have that perspective.
Yeah, and I think it's interesting coming at it from the perspective of a coach, because a lot of times when we think of ourselves as runners, we try to overhype ourselves, and, in both good and bad ways. I think that every runner kind of gets in that mindset where they always want to do their best. And yet sometimes they need that outside perspective in order to really embrace that. My mind goes to one time when I was out, just a regular 5-mile jog. And I mean, a lot of my friends are probably listening to this, and they're like, "Oh, this is quintessential Andrew." And I just like rolled my ankle on like one of those gumballs.
I hate those things.
I know. And it was so harmless. It didn't hurt at the time. Like, I finished the run. It was just like an easy run, almost to a recovery run point, but rolled my ankle. And then you get that adrenaline later that afternoon, it just starts hurting. So I'm like, oh, well, I'll just like go home. I'll ice it. Like, I knew my ankle, you kind of know when you've like tweaked it and you probably need to take a day off. And then I woke up the next morning, I couldn't walk on it. I'm like, oh. So I did the whole morning routine and went all throughout it. And I just remember sitting there the whole day, all right, I can still get my run in. I can still get my run in. And finally, I think it was 3 or 4 o'clock, and I texted my coach, and I'm like, I said, I feel so bad about this. I'm not going to be able to get my run in. I turned my ankle on a gumball yesterday. And I just remember him saying, he's like, Andrew, you did the right thing. Right. And sometimes it's we runners can get in the way of ourselves. How much was it for you of adapting, especially when you had your first coach, and especially, are you still coached, or are you?
Oh yeah.
So, and I mean, I think that's important for a lot of runners to have a coach, especially for running coaches to have coaches. And so what was it like for you adapting from someone who was running on your own, kind of writing your own workouts, or doing those kinds of things, to someone who was being coached, adapting to that process of being coached as a runner?
Yeah. Well, with that, this was, probably almost 10 years ago when I had that experience with my first coach. I think at first I just, in my own growth process, I, initially just really felt like this was an investment. I was going to do everything the coach said, and I think along those ways, I learned that you need to be more of a thought partner with your coach, and not be afraid to ask questions, and be vulnerable and share things that are within the scope of your running, but also recognizing that you are a whole person. And so life stress, and as a woman, your menstrual cycle, as a parent, things with the stress of managing your family, all of that needs to be incorporated. And at first, I don't think I was comfortable with that. But as my experience, both as a coach and as an athlete who has a coach and values a coach, that over the years, that's become more and more important and has led to a lot more success. So I actually just made a coaching change after being with the same coach for 4.5 years, who I really, really loved and love and respect a ton. And this was really interesting because with that coach, I was with him for 4.5 years, had huge success. I ran a PR after 8 years of not being able to run a PR in the marathon. I've stayed healthy, all kinds of good stuff. But that coach, I never had any accessibility to him. He's on the other side of the country and doesn't do a ton of road running at all. Like actually zero. He's never at any running races. And I started to feel like, well, I want a coach that maybe I could see like when I go to a marathon, and like have that kind of accessibility. And so I made a change after Boston in April and switched to my current coach who is just as awesome as my last coach, just a little bit more involved in the running world. So, it doesn't mean like when you make a change that it's necessarily because it's not going great. Sometimes you just realize there are other things that you want out of it that might not be like, that wouldn't have been appropriate for me to ask of my last coach. Like he's not going to be showing up at road races, but what I'll say is the constant communication, that accessibility to me is super important.
And I think that that's such a valuable lesson to learn, especially as a runner, because when we think about what it means to run, sometimes that outside perspective almost becomes helpful, right? I akin it almost to kind of like therapy. Like sometimes it's nice to have someone who is not there all the time, or someone that isn't your brain that's able to kind of take a different perspective on that. And so as you adapted and as you came into this style of being coached, what became the point where you're like, hey, I think that this is something that I would enjoy doing?
Well, I was actually coaching before that.
Oh, okay.
I started coaching prior to having a one-on-one coach. I was doing coaching, like group coaching for a local running store in the DC area, Potomac River Running, and had a handful of one-on-one clients that I was working with. I just hadn't really I was doing coaching. I was being coached in a group sense before I invested in having a one-on-one coach for myself. And didn't do that until probably 3 years into coaching myself.
Do you think there's a reason that maybe we as runners often are hesitant to have like a coach? I feel like my journey is somewhat similar to yours, where, I was a part of a group program in Richmond before I moved down here. And so like we had coaches in the program, and we had like a head person who kind of wrote the training plan literally for like the whole team. Yeah. It wasn't necessarily individualized, but then, moving down here and not having necessarily like a group coaching sense, but still part of a run club, to then get like an individual coach. Like, what do you, maybe from your experience, both as an athlete who may have been a little hesitant about the one-on-one coaching, but also working with athletes, what do you think that hesitancy is with having maybe that one-on-one coaching experience, or even more so a personalized coaching experience within even a group setting?
Yeah, I mean, I think that the reasons for that are varied, like depending on the person. Sometimes it's purely a budget thing. Like, having a one-on-one coach is a financial investment. So I think that was a big part of it for me, close to 15 years ago. Like I just didn't have the finances to invest in that level and joining a group. I mean, initially when I was coaching myself, I bought a book, so I think some of it is that. And then, there is, for some people, and I think I, can look back on the me of, years ago, like not knowing if I was like running coachable material, like looking at myself and like, well, how, it's really interesting to talk to people and to explore within yourself, like this owning of yourself as a runner, of being able to say, I'm a runner, or versus like, I run, what's the difference? And it doesn't just actually happen in running. Like I make art. I am really like squirmy in saying I'm an artist. That feels different to me. And I think that putting, maybe some of it is labeling, but also it's like stepping into that power of just, identifying as someone like, with running, I think there have been, unfortunately, like cultural, social, categorizations of what, and like definitions of what makes someone a runner, what makes someone look like a runner, how fast does someone have to move to be a runner, all of that. Like it's, just as it's very simple, yet it's complicated because humans are simple yet also complicated. And so I think there's a lot of like psychological and emotional things to unpack in that. So investing in, like, I remember when I bought myself a Garmin. I remember when I bought myself fast shoes. This is way before there were super shoes. This is when like all the rage was like lower drop shoes or what, and having more than one pair of shoes to do my training in. Like those all were big steps for me in my running journey, regardless of what anyone else thought, but that I was claiming this as something that was part of me and help define who I am and how I show up and how I express myself and how I take care of myself and move through the world, as someone who is a runner.
Yeah.
That might not have been the question you were asking, but I do think that it's tied to whether or not you are going to take that leap and invest in yourself in hiring a coach to help you achieve what's important to you through the sport of running.
Well, and when we think about it, even, I mean, there's always going to be the financial side of it, right? There's always going to be like, can I afford this? How much does it cost? All of those things, I'm going through all of that right now, just trying to figure out, I mean, even just as a coach, what do I charge? Because I want to be able to, you want to make it accessible. And so even like the coaches, like we have those questions too, of like, we want it to be accessible and also for it to be an investment. And I think that's, in a lot of ways where it comes down to, and it's not just, it's like the investment you're able to make, right? That's kind of one aspect of it. But then also you think about, like you said, the investment you're willing to make. And what do we think of ourselves? And, that kind of gets us back to, talking about the nature of pace of me running. And I mean, again, like I love scrolling through your website in prep for this interview because there's a wholeheartedness about it. And hearing you say that and making that connection for myself and, separating the ability to afford coaching and the willingness to get coaching. There's a sense in which my willingness to get coaching is attached to like, well, do I actually feel like a runner? Am I actually a runner?
Am I worth it?
Am I worth
it? Like, that's a huge question. I hear a lot of people think, and sometimes people are afraid to like give someone the reins of like, oh, what if they make me do this or that, or they don't let me do this or that? Like, if I have a complicated life and I, can't run on Tuesday when I thought I could, people have anxiety about that. But, I was reflecting because I think I told you I ran my first marathon 24 years ago in Philadelphia. I'm 48, so that was half my life ago. And I was in Philadelphia this past fall for the first time for race weekend since I ran it. And I was looking back, kind of in my heart and mind's eye of like, well, who was I when I was this young 24-year-old woman who decided that running a marathon could help her change her life? And really like reclaim who she believed herself to be or discover who she thought she could be or who she thought she was. And again, this is so long ago. It was way before running community evolved into what it is today. But I went for a run the day after the Philadelphia Marathon along the Schuylkill River. It's this beautiful running path, right? You leave downtown and you go out, along the water. It's so pretty. If you've never done it, I highly recommend it. But I just felt really emotional and just like, wow, holy cow. Like I never could have dreamed back then that I would be coming to Philly 24 years later with a team of coaches and runners, and cheering out on Kelly Drive, like with a megaphone for all these runners, and it was sort of surreal, but I was getting emotional as I was running out. And when I turned around to head back to the city, someone had graffitied on this like sign on the side of the trail. you are worth every mile. And they drew a heart, which is part of like the Pace of Me logo, is a heart that I drew. And I stopped and just like literally just started crying and took a picture of it, because that is at the core, or like, not to sound too cheesy, but at the heart of why I do what I do, and why it has, like, Pace of Me has evolved totally organically. I did not sit out with like a business plan. I mean, there weren't like female running coaches doing what I was doing back in 2010, like it just like evolved into this, but it came out of the fact that, like, I have said running changed my life. And I do believe that. But what's really at the root of that is that I changed my life, and that I found running as a tool, as a practice. The more I run, like the older I get, the longer I'm still in this sport and like doing what I'm doing and like experimenting and exploring what's possible at every stage in our lives through putting one foot in front of the other. I realize I want to do this for the rest of my life. Whatever that's going to be. And so, it's become more of a movement practice for me than anything else. It's, I'm still striving for fast times and like doing cool stuff and whatever. But what's lasting about it is that this helped me stand in my own worth and believe that like this hard work would be worth something, that I and what I could discover through it would be worth something. And I think as a coach and as coaches, all of us, we are gifted this opportunity to, I've said, have a like, not be a backseat driver, but like be in the front seat with someone. Like, like I get to witness it firsthand, but I am not driving the car. They are. I'm just there, like trying to help guide them. And I can't give them these discoveries, but my hope is that I can help them find that inside themselves, that, maybe it is going to be found sometimes in achieving a time goal that you set out, that like, or something like a Boston qualifier, or breaking a barrier with time. But like all of this is so personal, and it doesn't like, I mean, I'm not quite 50, but I can tell you like, it's not over. I don't feel like time is running out, where honestly, like maybe the me of 10 years ago was kind of worried about that. But now I'm like, oh no, like this is just getting more fun. There's more to it. I'm having a lot of fun.
Well, and I think that when that's a part of sort of the foundation of something, it really helps others to understand it and to see it more within themselves. And so I'm wondering, as you're building this relationship with folks, what does that consultation phase look like? You have someone who is, they might be a little skeptical. It's like, do I deserve to be coached? Like, do I deserve to have a personalized training plan that is like X amount of miles per week with like this speed work that is written just for me? And I mean, we all know like there's only there's a limited amount of speed workouts that can take place, but to have it like be personalized for someone to be able to do it to make them better, that can be a lot sometimes for someone to get their head around. And so what are you doing? And, maybe this might come from experience or, education or whatever it is. What are you doing with these athletes to help them know? Like, I'm not trying to sell you because I want to make money. I'm trying to sell you because I want you to be better. Like, how do we balance that in this world where, you are someone who this is a business for you, and yet someone who like genuinely cares about their athletes?
Yeah. I mean, if someone's going to contact me about coaching, like they are reaching out to me, right? And they have, a reason for that. And so we will set up a call. Like I have a Zoom call with someone tomorrow. I love to do it that way if we can. Or we'll just hop on the phone and we just talk. And I answer their questions and get to know them. And like through the coaching process, I mean, we have unlimited communication at Pace of Me Coaching, and we really encourage it. We use a coaching platform. We use the V.O2. And our clients, like they we tell them like the more they communicate with us, the better. So with my athletes, like I want to hear from them after every run. They will hear back from me every single day. I would way rather, have that kind of communication than not hear from someone. And I just say everything matters. Everything's, nothing is TMI and everything's confidential. And so I really do want them to feel, we use the app, but then they also have my phone number. We text, we talk on the phone when we can, and anytime we need to. And then we always talk like before and after races too. So it's truly unlimited communication, is key. And that's how we get to know each other. I do think like being that other pair of eyes and getting to know someone and like what's involved in their journey is like I can help shine some lights on areas that they might overlook. Like, I have an athlete, we did a pre-race call today. She's going to do a half marathon this weekend, and she's had some weird stuff happen to her over the last year, including like a scare with like a DVT, like a clot. It's not a clot, but like we had a scare about that. And so we pulled back, and, she, at one point we were like, not even sure she'd get to this start line because we didn't know if that would be the right thing. But here she is, she's healthy, she's ready to do it. And like, she kind of had moved away from that perspective a little bit. Like, wait, hey. So for me as the coach to bring her back and be like, hey, do you remember? Like, you weren't even sure you be going to this race. So like, that's something to celebrate, and sometimes I think just little big things as a coach, you can point out to people like about their growth, about their progress, about how much they've achieved. Like in her case, this is her second half marathon since August. It's so awesome, and so just giving people that perspective. Sometimes it's zooming out and sometimes it's zooming in. But I do think it's about the relationship and the connection, with the person and treating them like a whole person. And it's not, obviously like I love the science. I choose the workouts and the runs appropriately, for each individual athlete. And sometimes we're making changes. Like if someone, that's why I want to hear from them. If they have a little niggle or they're feeling sore or tired, we might move a workout or run. We might change it to easy miles. We might do a rest day, that kind of stuff helps keep them moving forward. That's kind of what we're in the business of here, helping people continue to move forward.
And to me, I think as we're considering what running looks like and how it's embodied, just, whether locally, digitally, or we think about the impact that makes, what does it mean to be a part of that process for folks? So I often love to say, like, at a starting line, and I always use our Shamrock Marathon, which is our big marathon here in Virginia Beach.
Oh, I know it. I've run it a couple times.
And I've told Jerry and Amy all the time, I said, on that starting line are 20,000 stories of how they got to that starting line. And whether those people want to say anything about it or not, like, we've become a community together because we've experienced this starting line together. And so what does it mean for you when your athletes go to these races? They toe the starting line. They're there. They're doing these things. And they got Coach Jess like screaming for him at the finish line. Seriously, folks, go to Jess's Instagram. Look at these pictures of her just going crazy in Richmond. But like, what's it like for you to be able to see, from that first consultation of whatever that may be to being able to just see, even if it's a terrible marathon day, to just see them be able to, like I say, just do the dang thing.
Yeah. Almost like aren't words. That is so special to actually physically be there when your athlete's crossing the finish line and you can actually like catch them. It's the coolest feeling. It's such a wonderful feeling. And, it does you don't know how, like, even when someone has like a perfect training cycle, like you don't know what you're going to get on race day sometimes. Like, I mean, it can be I had one of my athletes at Richmond who ran an awesome PR. But her splits were not looking good in the first like 10K. I was like, what is happening? And she totally rallied, pulled it together. She had to wait in a freaking porta potty line. It was ridiculous. It slowed her down, but she, oh my gosh, she ran like a 10-minute PR. It was so rad. But that was like, so I was like, oh my gosh, like, when you're home and you're tracking your athletes and you're not at the race and you're like, what's happening? Oh my gosh. So it was so awesome that I could like see her when she crossed the finish line, like celebrate with her. I mean, because you're right, everyone does have a story, every single one of us, and a reason to be there. And it's just so powerful. So I feel like, those opportunities where you can be together in person. I mean, this fall, I was at Chicago, I was in New York, I was in Richmond, and I was in Philadelphia. And I just like, that's kind of like, the longer I coach, like I want more experiences like that. Cause it's not just about me and my athletes, but it's also like introducing them to each other and to the other coaches. Even when we're not there, like the Pace of Me coaches, we have a athlete race calendar that we keep like in a shared Google Drive, and we put every athlete, in every race in the calendar. So, and then we connect them, if there's, more than one athlete, we connect them with each other, and, no pressure, but like if a Pace of Me coach isn't there, we still want to give them the opportunity to find each other and have that sense of community. Which is, I mean, like my athletes that were in Indianapolis this year, there were 4 of them, 3 who I coach and 1 who Steph coached. And the 4 of them got together and like, they're sending us selfies and pictures of them together, like having coffee before and, doing the shakeout and then post race. And I'm like, they just made new friends, like other people who share in this thing called a running journey and, are part of a community of people who care.
Yeah.
And that I think is really powerful.
And it's interesting to think about online coaching and where your athletes are all over the country. What sort of things do you do? I mean, you seem to have a very, good relationship, obviously with the other coaches, obviously with your athletes. Like, what does that look like? How does that network work? Does everybody know everybody? How do you guys do those kinds of things?
No,
I think
I wish.
That's fascinating.
Yeah, I mean, we're trying to foster that, like for people who want that, and I think that the more Pace of Me is around and the larger our community is, like, we're attracting people who find that, like, that is something that is of value to them. And so they'll take advantage of it, but we offer opportunities. Like, we do have like a team, private Facebook group where we'll post things and share things in there. We have a newsletter. We do the connecting at races and stuff. And then we do, like this year we did some really awesome, we're creating like a library of resources for our athletes with other professionals who are not, running coaches. So we have Emily Saul, who's a sports psychologist, come on, and she did a series of talks for our team over Zoom, where people could, bring their questions and stuff on certain aspects of the mental side of training and racing. And we did the same type of thing with a registered dietitian, Kylie Van Horn, who is awesome. And she did a series of calls for our athletes too. And we have some other things in the works. We have a book club for our team. We brought Sabrina Little on, and like she's the author of a great book. And so she came in, and this book was, oh my gosh, my brain is not functioning right now. I cannot remember the name of the title of the book. It was so good. She's a philosopher, and actually she's at Christopher Newport University. And she talked about like how running, like why good people make better runners, and like that relationship between like being a good person and being a good athlete and running in particular. And I just can't even, I'm so embarrassed that I can't remember the name of the book right this second. But it was so good. And it was a really thoughtful and awesome conversation that we had in our book club. And we're going to do our next one in January with Andrea Pete, who's a very good friend of mine, who wrote a book that's titled, I do remember, called Hope Fights Back. And Andrea is an athlete who has ALS and has done a marathon in all 50 states. And her book is phenomenal. And she also did a documentary called Go On, Be Brave. And so the team is going to be like reading the book, watching the movie, and then we'll come and have a talk with Andrea and with each other. But that's virtually, you know. This weekend, I'm doing an event locally here in Raleigh, because we do have a lot of athletes that are in this triangle area. And we're doing a run and a Pilates mat class at one of my friends and my Pilates teacher's studio. I taught Pilates for 10 years, and it is a huge part of what I believe keeps me healthy and moving well as a runner. So we're doing a community event this weekend. And then also here in the summer, we do something called Summer Saturdays. And we've done it for the last 2 summers, but we partner with a friend of mine who owns a strength studio in Raleigh called Studio Brick. And we actually go out to the American Tobacco Trail, which is an awesome rail trail here in the Triangle. Have you ever run on it?
I've never been. Nope, not yet.
You got to come this summer and join us for Summer Saturday. So we actually we set up a recovery station on the side of the trail. We did it for 7 weeks this summer, and we have local PTs out there, and they set up their tables and they treat people right on the trail. My sister, who's a massage therapist, also brought out her table and gave people massages. We have chocolate milk and ice cold towels, and Fleet Feet provided some noon hydration. We have a good friend who did we had raffle prizes for people. So Solomon Running and Birkenstock and Features socks. It was just a trail side party for 3 hours every Saturday morning. And it was free. People just came, brought their run. We didn't do any this is the run, just bring your run, bring yourself. And it's so freaking hot here in the summer and humid. And so kind of motivations, you get people out the door, some accountability, some community. And we had people travel from in drivable distances and bring their friends, from as far away as 2-3 hours away. So things like that, just trying to bring people together so you can see yourself and others. And it's just really a great way to give and receive support.
Yeah. And I mean, even if it's not being able to gather your athletes who, maybe all over the country,
totally. Yeah.
I think it's also cool, looking at it and seeing, this is some of the commitments that, whether it's you or some of the other coaches that you work with, even what y'all are doing in your local communities. Because another thing that can often be forgotten, in being a coach, is that, maybe sometimes coaches, they want to do things too. And so what's it like, I kind of just want to close with what's it like for you to stay active, to keep, for you to keep running, for you to keep going after whatever you want to go after in terms of goals on the run? Are you still finding that drive? Obviously you still have a coach. So, I would assume so, but what's it like for you to continue to follow that drive?
Yeah. I'm getting ready to train for Boston this April. It'll be my 4th consecutive. And I kind of toyed with this idea of, let me see if I can get 10 consecutive Bostons under my belt. And I was pretty motivated that was what I was going to do. I qualified for 2026 in Chicago. I'm really close. This year in Boston, I'm going to try to run a PR, for sure, a course PR if I get good conditions. I think I've been in shape for it. This year, I think I was really close, but we had a hot day. So I adjusted and had a really strong race, but it wasn't a PR day for me. And so I'm kind of curious. I'm just curious and I'm trying to follow that curiosity, but I have to say and working with Emily Thal, the sports psych, I am really exploring like what is a meaningful goal to me, because when I decided to do 10 Bostons in a row, like that sounded cool, but I think I don't know that I want to do the same marathon every year for 10 years. Like I'd be 55 when I finish that. And Boston's cool. And I will probably be there as a coach, all of those years. But like, that is more of an extrinsic motivator. It's not intrinsic. Like, it's not something that's like, I'm just questioning it. I feel like I might be like answering to what's meaningful to someone else that's not inside my own heart. And so maybe I'll just like see how many years in a row I can qualify and have that be cool. But I don't know. I do believe I still have my fastest times in me. I see it in my training. That's really fun. To still be, I'm just like kind of, it just makes me laugh. Like in this way of like, wow, I'm still at it. Like, who would have thunk? Like just, I don't know. It's pretty cool. So I feel very driven in that. And like, I like one of the things like we put on in our team Facebook group, it says Team Pace with Me, like on the title page that I made. And then under that, it says In It Together. And I take pride in that, like that I'm in it with all of them. Yeah. Like I recognize that like I do have years of education and experience as a coach and like guiding people. And I am the leader. I can step into that and own that. And it's not a but. And I am also on my own journey in my own path. And I think it's important for me to share, like I've shared with the people that I coach, like I'm curious about my goals too. Like I'm working this out. I'm working with a sports psych to like, unpack some of those feelings and thoughts around that. Like the most important thing to me is that I am able to continue putting one foot in front of the other and moving my body in this way for like as long as possible. Like I actually just said this to Emily the other day, this quote, the trick is to die young as late as possible. And that's what I'm trying to do with my running too. Like it's back to the holistic nature of this thing. Yeah. It's like, so that's why I am like, yes, I get on the foam roller every day. I do my mobility every day. Like I do, make sure I'm hydrating and getting my protein, and like I do my Pilates and I go to PT once a month, and all those little things in order to give myself the best chances at really getting a shot at exploring, well, what do I want to follow in my heart? So for now, I am like really curious. What can I do? And I recognize with Boston that I am very protective of my experience there. I have never had a Boston that I didn't enjoy. Like even when I didn't feel awesome, I still like am very careful about that race. And so this year I am working on, even though I haven't even like officially started that build, letting go a little bit of some of that, holding it so tightly and taking some risks. If I want to find out how fast I can run that race, I might need to, take some risks a little earlier on than I'm comfortable doing.
Yeah. And at the basic understanding, it is, I appreciate that as a coach, it's not just, sometimes you get coaches who, they might be kind of, quote unquote, past their prime and not competing anymore. But then you also have the coaches who genuinely, you can see the joy of the sport as they participate in it.
Yeah. And I want to challenge that whole like idea of being past your prime. Well, what is that anyway? Like,
well, and like past the prime is in like,
you know what I mean? I know
as in like maybe physically can't run. Like,
you physically can't. That would be, yeah.
Well, I also think that, people are rewriting what prime is. Sarah Hall just broke the Masters record again
And her own record
is pissed because she didn't make the Olympics this last year.
Right. Yeah. I think it's all about like what you choose. And we don't necessarily get to choose our physical stuff, right? But we do get to choose how we think and feel about it. So, and like how we define it.
Yeah. Well, and it goes right back to defining like what a runner is. And I think, you know, if you can find joy in that definition yourself, I think that there's something to be said for, you know, no matter how you define it, right? I mean, you've come to the realization where it's like, okay, I don't have to run Boston every year. In fact, that actually just might not sound fun. You know, maybe something else is, you know, finding what works for you, and, you know, allowing, but also being there for other folks. Cause I'm sure you also have runners who are passionate about wanting to go to Boston.
Totally.
You know, I have friends who love to run marathons. I have no desire to run a marathon. I can still coach them. You know, but I think that the joy that is in the activity of movement and running, you know, it's such a great thing to hold on to, especially as you're coaching and especially as you're playing that role, because it brings that extra level of sort of joy and desire to it as well. So let's hit these end of podcast questions real quick.
Okay.
Jess, what is your favorite distance to run?
Oh, that's really hard. I mean, so to run, you mean to race?
Yeah.
Like what race distance? I mean, my heart is with the marathon. It just is. It is. I can't deny it. For sure.
What is your favorite thing to eat post-run? Like, what are you grabbing when you finish? It can be a long run. It can be a race. It could just be a Tuesday.
Yeah. Well, there is a difference between a Tuesday and a race day.
Oh, definitely.
Like, for sure. I feel like right away, I don't really want anything. I just get that protein shake down. But like for my celebration meal, I mean, I will never say no to pizza. It's so good. It's probably my favorite. But that won't work right away. I gotta wait a few hours.
There you go. And lastly, Jess, can you give our listeners a reason to join their local run club?
Oh my gosh, that's an awesome question. Yeah, I mean, you never know who you might meet. You could make your new best friends. Like you find really interesting, awesome people who get you. Runners are fun and weird in the best way. Always
great, just understandings and things that we get from just being able to see those people around us, like sharing in this stuff.
Yeah.
So thank you so much for joining. What a great conversation.
Thank you. It's been fun.
So here's the thing. I mentioned it during the episode, but I believe that every runner can benefit from having a coach of some kind that helps you grow as a runner and a person. And I think that that's why Jess's story is so enticing in this entire thing, is because we heard within that story the nature of her getting better as a runner. It wasn't about, being able to do things. She says that she has the knowledge of, she started coaching before she had a coach herself, but realizing her need for a coach, she says, helped her to become a better runner. And I think that it shows and highlights the amount of support that you get in that space. It can really build something up for us and really make us intentionally think about what it means to be a runner when we have other folks who we're not just accountable towards, but who are there helping us along the journey. And it's so cool to see the support that Jess offers to her athletes, the community that she's built at Pace of Me, just with her other coaches, with her own runners and those one-on-one relationships, but even just in the running community in general. So she's not even isolating herself from everything else that's happening. She's out there. She's being the coach that she wants, but she's also has that coach that she wants. She works with her coach one-on-one to be able to get the most out of herself. And that's the exact same thing that she wants for her athletes as well. And we see that over and over and over again as we listen to this story, as we listen to what Pace of Me has become, as we listen to helping runners at every stage of their journey. And the thing is you don't need to be breaking records. You don't need to be setting PRs. You don't need to be doing all of these crazy things to need a coach. You can just want to better yourself. You want to get in better shape. You want to just know how to run better. You want to be wiser about how you run, about having a set schedule. These are things that coaches can help with. And I think this is one of the things that gets highlighted when we are in community together, is that there are so many different ways that we can help one another grow. And so what a great and wonderful conversation that Jess offers. I want to thank you for hanging out with me here on Run, Build, Grow. If you have a great story, I'd love to hear it. Email me at andrew@runninrev.com and we can get you booked for a podcast recording. And don't forget, connect with me on Instagram, Blue Sky, Strava, Substack. You'll find those links in the show notes. I publish and put content all over those places. You know, if today's episode gave you a spark, don't forget to follow and subscribe wherever you listen to your podcasts, or head over to runbuildgrow.com to catch every podcast. You can go back and listen to the catalog, and even if you subscribe, have future episodes just automatically pop up in your feed. Got an extra minute? Jump on to Apple Podcasts, leave a quick rating or review. If you're on Spotify, drop a rating and a comment on this episode and other episodes you listen to. You know, it's a simple way to help others discover the show and even let me know what's resonating with you. And here's the deal. If you leave a review, I'll give you a shout out right here in the next episode. Want to go the extra mile? Support the podcast and keep it growing strong by heading to buymeacoffee.com/runninrev. Whether it's a one-time tip because you just absolutely enjoyed this episode, or if you want to become a regular supporter and a monthly member supporter of this podcast, every contribution helps this community grow on and off the run. Thanks for being here and for being part of this journey. Until next time, go crush it out there. And as always, make every mile count.